So just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Emily Stevenson. I'm a recent master's graduate from the University of Exeter and currently working as a research technician for Dr. Amy Murray at the University of Exeter as well. I'm also the co-founder of Beach Guardian, which is a Cornwall-based marine conservation organisation. And I've spent the last few months working as part of the Y7 or the Youth 7, which is the official youth engagement group for the G7. And it's that I'd like to briefly talk about today. As Emma said, just talking about what was achieved by young people before, during and after the G7 summit. And what I'd like to do is try and answer three questions: who, what, and how. Who are the Y7? What did we find out? And how did this lead to instigating positive change? Now, full disclosure, and for a bit of context, when I talk about young people today, I'm talking about the age bracket between 18 and 30. And that doesn't mean to say that if you are under the age of 18, your opinion or ideas do not matter. And likewise, if you're over the age of 30, it absolutely does not mean that you are no longer young. I did not set the brackets, so don't shoot the messenger. So who are the Y7? So as I say, the Y7 are the official youth engagement group for the G7. And the engagement groups for the G7 are basically tasked with making sure that everybody that's part of the society are consulted in the lead up to the Leaders Summit. So there are various different engagement groups. There's the Business 7, the Women 7, the Science 7, and of course the Youth 7. And the Youth 7 were tasked with consulting people aged 18 to 30. So we started consulting people back in February, and as part of the consultation process, there were delegates and youth forum members. So they're basically young people from across the G7 nations. And we consulted with over 10,000 young people during this process. And the idea was that we were to formulate all of these opinions and ideas and priorities of the young people we were talking to in a final communique, which we released to the public at the Y7 summit back in May, which we then delivered to the G7 leaders to consider in their discussions at the G7 summit. Now, the work of the Y7 was divided into 4 different policy tracks. So we worked in climate and environment, which is where I was working, the economy, health, and digital and technology. So really varied breadth of opinions and ideas coming from the public, from the young people. So what did we actually find out? So it was so inspiring to talk to so many different people and hear so many different points of view. And I'm going to try and focus specifically on the UK with a focus on the Southwest as a region. So in the UK, we sent out a survey and 3,000 young people responded to the survey. And we found out some really interesting things from this survey. So looking specifically at climate and the environment, 1/3 of young people that participated in the survey felt uninformed about climate change. And what may be best for this section, whilst I'm just running through these, is if the screen stops sharing for a moment, and if I can be spotlighted, then hopefully this may go full screen as I talk about things that hopefully will change behind me. So from the survey, we found that 1/3 of young people felt uninformed about climate change, and 1/2 of young people that participated in the survey felt uninformed about antimicrobial resistance. Now, the biggest barrier to feeling informed about climate change was an accessibility, a lack of accessibility to information about environmental issues. And this came down to insufficient education in schools. But young people did come back and say that it was actually individual behaviour change that they believed was the biggest strength for young people to instigate positive change. Now, when we had the survey, we outlined various different environmental issues, from deforestation to climate change itself to rising sea levels and so on. And we asked the young people to order these in what they thought was most important to least important. And the number one priority of the people that participated in the survey was plastic pollution, which is of course incredibly relevant to our coastline here in Cornwall. And hopefully with that point above about individual behaviour change, young people feel empowered enough to make changes in their own lives to tackle plastic pollution. Now, one huge thing to come out of our consultation with the Youth 7 was the importance of mental health. It came out as the top priority across all of our policy tracks. So climate and environment, health, economy, and digital technology. Across all four of those tracks, mental health was the most key priority of young people. And what was really interesting was that the Southwest ranked second on putting mental health as their top priority. So it's clearly important to the young people here in the Southwest. So that's what we found out, but how did that instigate change? What did that actually lead to? So as I say, we formulated a communique which summarized all of these areas of importance and proposed policy ideas to the G7 leaders. And in that final communique, we've featured environmental education, plastic pollution, sustainable agriculture, microbial pollution, and of course, mental health. Now, once this went to the G7 leaders, we were absolutely thrilled when the G7 communique, the leaders' communique was released, to see that many of these were actually included. And the last one is what I'd really like to focus on just to bring my talk to a close, and that's the mental health. Now, as I said, this was really important to all young people across the G7 nations, particularly now as we're hopefully coming out of an unprecedented global pandemic. Young people have been really struggling with their mental health and well-being. And it was hugely important, especially in the climate and environment track. What we were finding with our consultation is this huge eco-anxiety that young people are experiencing, this fear of inheriting a damaged planet. Now, what's really special about the fact that mental health was featured in the G7 communique is that mental health has never been featured in a G7 communique before. And it was a direct result of what's been happening with young people. So because of the Youth 7, because of the work that we'd been doing, and because we featured it in our communique, Boris Johnson himself said that it was because of all of that that mental health was featured in the final communique for the first time. And this is really, really important to us. And it really not only will hopefully destigmatize mental health, but make sure that we're working towards providing support to people that need it. And it was so inspiring for me to see that actually, when young people are given a voice, the power that that can have, this could result in huge global change just from a group of young people getting together and talking about what's important to them. So this whole experience has been hugely inspiring for me, especially with the outcomes that we've had, just showing me the power that young people can have when they have a voice.